Hello and welcome. Today I'm joined by the incredible Alistair McGill. Ali is the founder of many organisations, including Ashton McGill, an incredible organisation that transforms owner-managed businesses through service design and customer experience. Ali is also a passionate cyclist, runner, and just so happens to make the best protein pancakes in the world, at least if his snaps are anything to go by. The whole world of service design and customer experience is becoming a topic that, we all need to address in business. So I'm really excited to get down and speak with Ali. Let's say hello, shall we?
Hello, Ali, and welcome. Welcome to this interview. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, Chloe. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm delighted to be joining you today.
Perfect. So the reason I asked you to come on is because we met on Snapchat.
We did, yeah.
Cool way to meet people. We were in similar circles, but it was cool. And actually, it was your protein pancakes that got.
Yeah, it's amazing the number of connections I've made because of protein pancakes. Who knew?
Yeah, right. And but then you started sharing some insights into what you did, and you started talking about this thing called service design. And I had never heard of service design before. And so as I started to explore it, I've learned that there's this whole world that I didn't understand that provides so much value to businesses. And that's why I invited you on. Could you maybe explain exactly what service design is and how you got into that world?
Yeah, of course. So at a really simple level, a simplistic level, service design is about designing services with the user in mind. So whilst my specific focus with service design is on businesses and working with companies, we can apply those principles anywhere. So where there's a user consuming a service, then there's an opportunity to design that in a way that will be a pleasant experience for the user. And that's really, in a very simple sense, what service design is about. I spent 25 years now running businesses in all sorts of different industries. And the common theme amongst all of them, Chloe, has been that every time I've built a business and grown a business, I've designed it around understanding the customer. And the language I would have used previously was making that business customer-centric. Yep. So it's all about making sure we deliver a good service to the customer. I probably wouldn't have used the word service 10 years ago. And I started to look into this in more detail around about 2008, 2009. And those days, service design wasn't even a thing. No one really knew it existed. It's a relatively young discipline, but it's grounded in the principles of design thinking, which some people will be familiar with. And design thinking as a concept has been around actually since the 60s. And really it's about using a designer's mindset to solve problems. And as designers, we're taught to look at things in a different way than the traditional approach that we've had as we've gone through school. And it really is about not accepting that the problem is the problem, and doing research and listening to people, understanding their perspectives. When service design came into my life was around about 2010, when my daughter went to university, and Rebecca went to study design at Duncan of Jordanston in Dundee at DJ CAD. And they have a number of fantastic people that work at the university, but in particular a guy called Professor Mike Press, who's become a good friend of mine. And Mike is and has been one of the pioneers of service design in the world. And here he is in Dundee, just down the road from where I am now. And Mike was one of the lecturers that Rebecca had on her course. And she came home from university one day and said, "Dad, there's this book you need to get, this thing called service design." And she's listened to me talk over the years about what I do. And she said, this is actually all the stuff that you do. And it's a book called This is Service Design Thinking. So I bought them. In fact, she bought me the book. And I started to devour that. And I also got the opportunity to meet Professor Mike Press through Rebecca. And that took me on a whole journey, which continues to this day. But that was 2010. It's now 2016, and I've just immersed myself in that world and just been like a sponge. I've absorbed and I've listened and I've learned and I've worked with some of the best people in the world when it comes to service design, the people who are the pioneers and the thought leaders in this space. So it's a journey that actually started 25 years ago. But actually the real magic has come for me in the last 5 or 6 years. And that exposure to people like Mike Press, Hazel White, Lauren Curry, the people who are just amazingly inspirational people doing great stuff and using service design as the tool to make that happen.
Wow, that's amazing. It's funny how a lot of the time on our journeys, we pick up little jigsaw pieces along the way, and they kind of fit in together until we find, I guess, our purpose and we're kind of meant to do. One of the things that you touched on was how you wouldn't have called it services, and you were focused on customer centric. Mm-hmm. So how does this whole service design thing that none of us really know what it's about, how does this tie to customer experience?
So for me, one feeds the other. There's customer experience is maybe a term that more business people will be familiar with. Certainly in the States, it's now a thing, and there's more and more discussion around customer experience online, and actually here in the UK as well. And customer experience is very much grounded in the business world, and it's about looking at the service that we deliver to customers and trying to make that a positive one. Obviously, with a business focus, that's about making more profit from the customers that we deal with, retaining customers for longer, increasing or reducing the churn rate, all that kind of stuff. So in the States, there's a whole industry of customer experience, but it's driven from very traditional business metrics. It's very, very much about systems and processes. It's actually very little about the customer, ironically. It's described as customer experience, but it's customer experience from the business's perspective. What can I do that will increase all of those things, that will leverage more profit from the transactions? What service design does is look at it from a different angle. It's almost the other end of the spectrum. And our approach with service design as applied to customer experiences is to deeply understand what it feels like to be the customer of that organization, and to really get into the deep emotions that occur when people engage with a service. And by understanding that and spending time listening to people, so a lot of what I do, I get paid money to listen to people. I get paid to watch people flow through a service. It's great way to spend your life. But it's about we're using service design principles to understand how businesses services make people feel, because there's these notions of business to business or business to consumer, but in reality it's person to person a lot of the time, and I think as businesses sometimes we forget that the person that we're dealing with is a person. It's too easy to think I'm dealing with that company, but actually you're not. I'm dealing with Chloe in that business, and Chloe is a person, and Chloe as a person will have an emotional journey as she engages with my business. And if we can really deeply understand that and accept that, and then listen to Chloe and how she's felt that experience, how that experience has made her feel, then we can learn so much stuff from that. And then we take that learning and use it to design a better experience for future users. That's the difference between the traditional approach and our approach. But it's also that I want to say ours is a more human approach. It's about making connections with people. And what we find when we do this is that, so we talk to our clients' customers on behalf of our client. And people are initially quite reticent about that, because they think, oh, well, we might hear some stuff we don't want to know. But actually, if there are things that are going wrong, you really want to know that. 91% of people don't complain. And I think it's 96% of people will leave without telling you why they're leaving. So those are big numbers. And if we can engage with those customers and actually talk to them and listen to them, then we can stop that happening, and we can better design the service for people that will come and buy in the future.
Yeah, that's huge. It's like, I guess it's your opportunity to take a negative experience where you lose a customer and turn it into what could be huge customer lifetime value, because you listened, not to reply, but to actually understand and come from a place of helping. I love that you made the point that we're all just people. I think sometimes we forget that we're users and we're consumers, and we know how we feel at certain points in time. And ultimately, when customers are coming to you, they're not just buying a product or a service. They're buying into a solution that's going to make them feel better and their life better. So kind of what you were saying really made me think about, you got to think about the customer journey, different stages they're going to go through, and what their mindset is at each time.
Yeah. There's also a thing about, it's really interesting you bring that up. I was working with a charity this morning, running a workshop with a charity, and we were looking at journey mapping. And a big part of it was trying to get them into the minds, not the mindset, but the minds of their users, and understanding what it feels like for those users to engage with the service, and then mapping all of the journey from the start, from before the start to beyond the end. What are the different stages, and then what are the different touch points that we have as an organization with the individuals? And what does that look like graphically? How do we map that and visualize we call them the pain points? So the areas where things either go wrong or it just makes the customer feel bad. And it's transformative, and you could see it's like light bulb moments sometimes when we do this, because you can see people all of a sudden realizing that they've been delivering something because that's what the system said or the process said, but they haven't realized the consequence of that on the individual. And then all of a sudden they do, and they're like, oh my God, why are we doing that? Why have we done it that way? We've done it that way for 10 years, but we never even thought about how the customer or the user was experiencing that. It can be really transformative.
Yeah, definitely. Just even, I know my own experience learning about it, it's been like that. A lot of the time, even when you go to learn business and things, you're taught, this is how you build a business, and here's the building blocks, and here's the structure, and then you go out to your customer, when the truth is you should be building all of that sort of, around your customer. That's what it means to be centric. As you say, it's like flipping the way things are sort of done. And I think when you do that, what you really get to the heart of is that people that are emotionally invested will then go on to be financially invested. But it has to happen with the emotion first, and you have to make that connection sort of first. So just with sort of that in mind, what do you think is the biggest problem or challenge or obstacle you see with the businesses that you do work with? What is the biggest problem, and do you maybe have an example just to sort of back that up?
The biggest problem is that most people don't even think about this, Chloe. It's not a thing. It's not on their horizon. They probably haven't heard of customer experience, and they certainly haven't heard of service design. So they just don't know. They just have a churn in their business, or they're not making as much profit as they can, or they get a lot of complaints, but they don't have a frame of reference to be able to deal with that. So that probably is one of the biggest challenges. The other big challenge alongside that is the way most organizations are structured. And you touched on it a moment or two ago there, that most organizations, certainly in the UK, and I think it translates across the world, are organized in a hierarchical fashion. So that will typically have the CEO or the MD at the top of a structure, a pyramid type structure. And actually the customer's nowhere on that organization chart. The evolution of that I've seen over the past sort of 10 years or so has been where people will talk about inverting the pyramid. So the CEO goes at the bottom and the frontline staff are at the top, because they're the people that deal with the customers. But that's still hierarchical. It's just been flipped. the companies who do this well, the organizations who do this well, have a different structure, and it's actually a circle. And it's a circle with a core, and the core of the circle is the customer. And the organizations are then designed around serving the customer and delivering value for the customer in whatever way they need to. It's rare to find an organization like that, but they do exist. And a good example in the UK is John Lewis, the John Lewis Partnership. For those that, I'm sure everyone knows who John Lewis are as a store, but they're a partnership, and every person within the organization has an ownership in the organization, and their structure is designed around the customer. The customer is right at the core of everything that they do. An example from the US would be Disney. Disney, in a workshop I ran yesterday, somebody was telling me about their experience with Disney and the way Disney solved a problem, which just is a very different way to the way we would do things in the UK, or most businesses would do things. Most businesses actually don't deal with problems particularly well. So I think those would be the biggest issues, and in terms of examples of companies that do it well, yeah, those two, and Apple as well. Apple are really good at this stuff. If you've ever visited an Apple store, then you'll probably have experienced the Apple way to do customer experience, and that's not what I don't know if you remember this, but Microsoft opened Windows stores a few years back. They did some pilots of them across in Silicon Valley, and they bombed because what they tried to do was copy the Apple Store. They even looked like the Apple Store, but it just had Windows on the front. And I remember seeing an image on Twitter of a mall in the US where there was an Apple Store, and a couple of shops down was a Windows store. And the Apple Store was packed out, absolutely packed out. And the Genius Bar, and there's all this cool stuff. And the Windows Store had all the cool furniture as well. There was nobody in it. Because they were trying to copy, but they didn't have the cultural reference that Apple do.
Yeah.
So I think those are some of the best companies at doing this stuff, Chloe.
I love that you mentioned that. I love that because I think that I know that in the social media world, it's probably one of the biggest problems as well, where the focus is all on sort of competitors and peers as opposed to customers and prospects, I guess. You're not truly you're saying it, but you're not actually doing it. So I think Apple's such a good example because, it's that thing. There's a new Apple phone out and people want it, even though they don't know what it does or I want the next iPhone and I'm waiting for it and I don't know what it is and I don't know what it does, but it makes me feel good to have. It makes me feel like I'm inspired, and that's I want to live the Apple life sort of thing. So it's a great example, I think, to show for smaller businesses who are watching this and are like, oh my goodness, I have not been looking up this. I need to go figure this thing out.
Yeah.
How do you get started with, service design and really focusing and honing in on that customer experience?
So I think there's a few things. I think the first thing I would do is jump on a computer anywhere and get onto YouTube and Google service design. And you'll find a ton of videos on there. Now, the service design discipline has grown up in public services. So an awful lot of what you'll see there is about improving healthcare or government services and so on. And that's useful, but it's not a commercial focus. We have a YouTube channel. I've got a ton of videos on there that go into service design for business. So maybe the thing to do is to Google service design for business. There's also a really good book that came out earlier this year, and I know you've got a copy of it, which is called Service Design for Business. So you can jump onto Amazon, grab a copy of that. It's written in plain English, because sometimes with the design world, people can it's like any industry that has its jargon, but that's a really good book that just breaks it down in simple steps in plain English and talks about, the world of business and how we can use these principles to deliver better services for our customers. So those would be, I think, the two key things to do. Beyond that, I think that what I would encourage people to do is to try to learn to see things from their customer's perspective. I talk about standing in your customer's shoes. and really imagining what it feels like to be the customer of your business. It's a hard thing to do. It's kind of like you've got to take yourself out of yourself and look back in the window. But if you can do that, and it takes a bit of training to get used to that, but if you can start to do that, then you'll have a much better perspective of your business and how you can do things better for your customers.
Yeah, that's huge. I guess even just writing that down and keeping it somewhere, like standing your so that every decision that you're making in your business, just being mindful and aware of that. Because as you say, a lot of the time it's not a thing. It's not a thing. So it's not a situation.
Yeah.
Something
there's one thing that I would say, and it's almost the maxim of, and I say this every day. I say it in every workshop, and we've got research that backs it up. The number one thing that customers have said we can do as businesses that will make them feel more loyal to us, the number one thing is make things easier. That's it. It's not give me more stuff. It's not deliver wow moments. It's none of that. It's make things easier. Yeah. So if as businesses we can make things easier for customers, then they'll feel better about us, we'll win more business, we'll make more profit as a result, they'll refer more business to us. That's not complicated. But too often what we do in our businesses, Chloe, is that we design our processes and systems to suit us, not to suit the customer. So if you can learn to stand in their shoes and see things from their perspective, what can we do that will make things easier for them? That's the winning strategy.
Love that. I know that I totally go by ease of use. Like, make it simple for me.
Yeah.
And make it, if you can make it look pretty as well, then you well. That's my thing. But that's wonderful. And I definitely would recommend that book as well. It has doodles.
Yeah.
Everything really cool as well. If you had to sum up service design in a tweetable, which is hard, I know that's difficult, how would you do that?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that, and I think it's what I've just said. I think the tweetable is make things easier. #service design, because we can make it as complicated as we want as a discipline, but actually it all boils back down to that. There's a bit about the customer, but make things easier. Yeah. If we can make things easier, then people will just engage with it much more. So it's make things easier, #service design.
Love that. Love it. And actually, it's a great point for people looking to implement this. Don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple.
It really is about keeping it simple.
Perfect. Okay, I have one last question because I always ask a random question. I'm trying to make it fun, but then I kept coming back to the same thing. What is the number one secret to making the best protein pancake in the
world? So I've learned, and I don't get this right every time, but the number one thing to making the best protein pancakes is to get your coconut oil at just the right temperature. Too hot and they'll burn a little. Not hot enough and they just have that undercooked look and taste to them. I like a little bit of crispiness around the side, which if my coconut oil is just at the right temperature, that does the business. Now, I used to make them with olive oil a while back, and then Joe Wicks came out with these books. They're just awesome. Lean in 15, and he had his protein pancake recipe in there, and he talks about this in there. And getting the coconut oil to the right temperature, that's the thing.
That's the key, people. That's
it.
So now you can all play MasterChef and make them. I'm going to try that. Actually, coconut oil is the best, but as you say, I always undercook mine or burn it.
Yeah, it's a hard thing, but see the days that you get it just right. It's like those are the days that you sell everything, that you have the best working days. If mine are a little bit burned, then I know the day's not going to go so good.
That's the key to success. Good protein pancakes.
Good protein pancakes.
Thank you so much for joining me, Ali. I know that people are going to want to connect with you after this. How do they go about doing that?
The best and easiest way to get in touch with me is on Twitter. And on Twitter, you'll find me at Ali_McGill. I am on Snapchat, but since Instagram stories came out, I'm over there now as well. So Twitter's the best place. Yeah,
perfect. Thank you so much. I also want to give a shout out to your YouTube channel because I love your YouTube channel. So I'm including a link to that one as well.
Awesome.
And thank you so much for joining me. It's been so much fun. You're always so much fun, Alan.
It's been a pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, Chloe.
Thank you. And hopefully we'll speak soon.
I'm sure we will. Take care.